Ooh, welcome everybody. How we all doing tonight? Welcome to another Garrison House. Tales from the Garrison House. Boy, it's fun. Long walk to get here. You never know what happens in life. It's been such a long time. Long time. So we're going to be telling some tales. Tales I remember from being in other lives. Being reincarnated at least 2 or 3 times, if not more. We're going to go back to the old days, the old tales. Some from the Restless Dead, some from the Havel's history, some from the deepest, darkest of the mind, and some from local poets, and some from Edgar Allan Poe. I hope you enjoy the next hour as I sip along and we travel through time, and I take you back to a time before computers, before technology, when people wrote things down, and they wrote and they wrote and they told stories, because there was no such thing as TV. So we're going back into that time frame, and I hope you can enjoy this tonight. And then by the end of the night, I will have lived out all my 9 lives, and I will go back to the graveyard and sleep for another year. Let's talk about Annabelle Lee. This is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. All right, Annabelle Lee. It was many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And in this maiden she lived with no other thought than to be loved by me. It was a child, and I was a child, and she was a child, in a kingdom by the sea. But we loved with love, but was more than love. And I and my Annabel Lee, with the love that winged scraps of heaven, converted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago, in the kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her higher born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in sulphur in the kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason all the men know, in the kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever the soul from the soul of beautiful Annabel Lee. From the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling any darling, my life, my bride, in the sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. That's a creepy type of poem, but that just brings me to something else that happened way back here in New England. It was the New England Seacoast, probably one of the most haunted seacoasts. It's more haunted than the West Coast is, for sure. The haunts on the seacoast go way back. I remember as a kid in the 1700s seeing sea creatures out there and hearing stories from the Native American brethren and everywhere else where there were spirits roaming the lands. I remember a story back in the mid-1800s, it must have been. There were these two young lads, a young lad and his young female companion. One came from the wealth of Rye. The other came from poverty of Portsmouth. He worked out on the sea. They were destined to be together, as the story was told. And she snuck down to the North Beach area, up on Route 1A, right along the coast. The rocky coast, that is. And he rowed his boat across the ocean from Portsmouth Light area to Rye to go get his lover. And they were going to run off and get married. A storm started and hit the seas. The seas got rough. The boat overturned. And both him and her disappeared. They never were able to locate the bodies. But if you go up to that area, and I've been up there in different lives, you can actually feel the spirit of him and her at this one park area in Rye Beach. It's very, very, kind of brings me back to Annabelle Lee, where the love transcended time. What an interesting story to tell. But yes, that story is true about the ill-fated love at Rye from Portsmouth. Alrighty. Let's find another story to tell. Oh, a love story. This will be a good one, because then we'll go local on this one. A Valentine. From her, this rhyme is penned, whose luminous eyes, brightly expressive as the twins of Laredo, shall, in her own sweet name, that nestling lies upon the page, and wrap from every reader, search narrowly the lines. They hold a treasure divine, a talisman, and an amulet that must be worn at the heart. Search well, measure the words and syllables. Do not forget the trivial point of, or you may lose your labor. And yet there is in this non-Gordian knot, which one night not undo without a saber, if one could merely comprehend the plot, and written upon the leaf, where now are peering eyes, skittling soul, there lie a paradise. The three elegant words oft uttered in the hearing of poets, by poets, as a name is a poet too. Its letters, although naturally lying, like the knight Pinto Mendez Fernando, still from the cinnamon for truth, Cease trying. You will not read the riddle through you. Do the best you can do. Well, that's an interesting little story. I'm going to go over here now, and I'm going to read you another great story of love. Love that has transcended time and space. If we don't mix things up, we will be fine. I remember this story growing up as a kid, in another life, and another time, when life was a lot simpler, and it was about love, and a sad love. I'm going to tell you the sad story of love. I know not time and space so intervene. What still waiting with trust and serene, thou bearest up thy 80 years and 10, or called at last art how heaven citizen, but here or there a pleasant thought of thee. Like an old friend all day has been with me, the shy still boy, from whom thy kindly land smooth his hard pathway to the wonderland, or thought and fancy in gray manhood yet keeps giving the memory of her early death. Today with the truth and falsehood speak their words through hot flipped cannon and the teeth of the swords, listing with the quickened heart and ear intent. The search to each sharp clause of that stern argument, I still can hear at times a softer note of the old pastoral music round me float, while though a hot gleam of our civil strife looms the green mirage of a simpler life, as at his alien post the sentinel drops the old bucket in the homestead wall, and hears old voices in the winds that toss above his head the live oak beard of moss. So in our trial time and under the skies, shadowed by the swords like Islam's paradise, I wait and watch and let my fancy stray to mildless scenes of youth and Arcadian day, and howsoever the pencil dipped in dreams shades the brown woods or tints the sunset streams. The country doctor in the foreground seems, whose ancient silky down the village lanes, dragged like a war car captive and his pains. I could not paint the scenery of my song, mindless of one who looked like there so long, who night and day on duty's lonely round made friends of woods and rocks, and knew the sound of each small brook and what the hillside trees said to the winds that touched the leafy keys, who saw so keenly and so well could paint the village folk with all their humors quaint, the person ambling on his wall-eyed room, grave and erect, with the white-haired backward blown, the tough old boatman, half amphibious grown, the muttering witch wife of the gossip tale, and the loud straggler leviting his blackmail. Old customs, habits, superstitions, fears, all of this lies buried under 50 years. To thee it is the most fit I bring my lay, and grateful own to the depth I cannot pay. Over the wooded northern ridge between the houses brown, to the dark tunnel of the bridge, to the street come struggling down, you catch the glimpse through the birch and the pine of the gable roof and porch, the tavern with its swinging sign, the sharp horn of the church, the river's steel blue crescent curves to meet them in ebb and flow, the single broken wharf that serves for the sloop and the gondola, with salt sea scents along its shores, the heavy hay coats and crawls, the long lantern of their once and the laziness fall, along the gray abundant wall, the idle shadnet dries, the toll of man in his cobbler's stall, still smoking with closed eyes. You hear the pier from the low undertone of waves that chafe and gnaw. You start a skipper's horn in blown to raise the creaking drawn at the time of the blacksmith's anvil sounds with slow and sluggard beat, or the stagecoach on its dusty rounds. Wake up! The staring street, a place for idle eyes and ears, and cobweb nook of dreams, left by dreams whose waves are years. The stranded village seems, and like the other moss and rust, the native dweller clings and keeps his unequivering trust. The old dull round of things. The fisher drops his patient lines. The farmer sows his grain, content to hear the murmuring pines. Instead of a railroad train, go there along the tangled steep slopes against the west of the hamlet. It's buried, either sleep and still profounder rest. There, back of the locust flowery plume, the birch and pale green scarf, and break the web of briar and bloom. From the name and the epitaph, a simple muster roll of death, of pomp and romance shown. The dry old names the common breath has cheapened and outworn, yet the pause by one low mound and pot. The wild vines over the laced and red words of rustic art upon the headstones traced. Happily young white-haired villager of 80 years can say what means the noble name in her, who sleeps with the common day clay, and exile from Gascon land, found refugee her and the rest, and loved of all the village band. Its fairest and its best. He knelt with her on the Sabbath morns. He worshipped through her eyes, and on the pride that doubts and scorns, stole in her fate's surprise. Her simple daily life he saw, by honest duties tried, in all things by the untrust law of fitness justified. For her the rank and aside he laid. He took the hue and the tone of this lowly life, and toiled and made her simple ways his own. You still in gay and carelessness ease, to harvest fields or dance. He brought the gentle courtesies, the nameless grace of France. And she thought him loved not less. From him she loved and turned, caught in her sweet unconscious, with love and quick to learn. Each grew to each in pleased accord, nor knew the gazing to the gazing town. If she looks upward to her Lord, or to her look down, her sweet, when summer day was over, her violin, mirth and wail, the walk on pleasant Newbury's shore, the river, and the moonlit sail. The way this printed out. Okay. And life brief through, the love belong, and the altar and the beer. The burial hymn, the bridal song were both one short year. Her rest is quiet on a hill, beneath the locust bloom. Far off her lover sleeps as still within the situated tomb. The Gascon lord in the village laid in death still clasp their hands. The love that levels rank and grade unites their severed lands. What matters to those on the hillside grave, for those blazoned stone forever to her western wave shall whisper blue Ganyan, O love, so howling every soil that gives tiny sweets and flower room. Whatever nursed by the ease or toil, the human heart takes bloom, plant of lost Eden from the sod, of sinful earth and unriven. White blossoms of trees of God drop down from the heaven. This tangled waste of mound and stone, it's holy for the sake, the sweetness which they still own. Breathe out from the fern and break. And while the ancestral pride shall twine the Gascon's tomb with flowers. Fall sweetly here, O song of mine, with the summer's bloom and the showers. And let the lines of several scene unite again in thee, a western wave and galley stream, and mingled in one sea. And that title is The Countess by Ella Weld. The reason why I read that, because if you take a ride down towards the back end of Haverhill, East Haverhill, you'll find the Countess's grave, and we've been there many of times. I remember when the Countess was running around as a little kid, later getting married to the French Count. They married out of love. Then he left for France. She passed away young, and her spirit still roams the land today. Take a ride down East Broadway, and you people have told me you will definitely see the Countess, Mary Devoir. So, well, that was interesting little write-up there. We're going to continue here. I'm going to be jumping around here a little bit, making sure I don't mix anything up. That's the most important thing. My next thing is what I love. I remember back in 1640-41 when the Pentucket Graveyard, I was just a little lad back then, when the Pentucket Graveyard started. And later on though, Haverhill poet John Greenleaf Whittier, by the way, not only was he an abolitionist, but when it comes to the paranormal and New England folklore, he's one of the earliest paranormal writers and folklorists in actually the United States. So I find this real interesting. He wrote a little poem. It's a lot less of a poem. It's shorter than the other one. Then we'll read something about a garrison written by him. All right. The old burial ground. We may go over, folks, but it'll be all right. We'll just keep going till this old soul dies, or needs to go back to the burying ground where he lays. Our valves are sweet with fern and rose. Our hills are maple crowned, but not from there our fathers chose the village burying ground, the dearest spot in all the land. To death they set apart, with scanty grace and nature's hands, and none from that of art. A winding wall of mossy stone, frost flung and broken lines, a lonesome acre thinly grown with the grass and wandering vines. Without the wall, a birch tree shows its duped and tasseled head. Within a stag horn stomach grows, fern-leafed with spiked and red. There sheep that gaze the neighboring plain, like the white ghosts that come and go. The farm horse drags, the feetlock change, the cowbell tinkles slow. Low moans the river from its bed, the distant pines reply, like mourners shrinking from the dead. They stand apart and sigh. Unshaded smites the summer sun, unchecked the winter blast. The schoolgirl learns the place to shun, with glances backward cast. For thus our fathers testified, that might read who ran, the emptiness of human pride, the nothingness of a man. They dared not plant a grave with flowers, not dress the funeral sod, where, with a love as deep as ours, they left their dead with God. The hard and thorny path they kept, from the beauty that turned aside, not missed they over those who slept, the grace of life denied. Yet still the wildering flowers would blow, the golden leaves would fall, the seasons come, the seasons go, and God and good to all. Above the graves the blackberry hung, the bloom, the green, the wreath, and the harebells swung as if they rung the chimes of peace beneath. The beauty of nature loves to share the gifts that hath for all, the common light, the common air, O earth sept the graveyard's walls. If I knew the glow of eventide, the sunrise and the moon, and glorified and sanctified, it slept beneath the moon, with the flowers or snow flakes for its sod, around the sessions ran, and evermore the love of God rebuked the fear of man. We dwell with fears on either hand, within the daily strife and the spectral problems waiting to stand before the gates of life. The doubts we vainly seek to solve, the truths we know are one, the known nameless stars resolve around the central sun. And if yesterday we weep, we have sown and taken the dole we deal, and the pain in love alone. The wounding is to heal, unarmed from change. To change we glide, we fall as our dreams, the far-off terror at our side, a smiling angel, secure on God's all-tender heart. Alike the great and small, why fear to lose our little part, when he is pledged for all? O fearful heart and troubled brain, take hope and strength from this, that nature never hints in vain, nor prospers amiss. Her wild birds sing the same sweet stave, her lights and airs are given, alike to playground and the grave, and over both is heaven. So that's interesting. We get out of the poetry for a few minutes, and we're gonna read some ghostly little tales here. This is the Amherst Mystery. Poltergeist. Now, I remember a lot of poltergeist activity through the years. I mean, I've been to poltergeist homes ever since I could crawl. It's a German word that means noisy spirit. When a house has poltergeist objects are thrown around, there are strange noises, raps, and thumps. Sometimes something will be broken. These happenings generally center around a young person Reports of poltergeist activity are fairly common. Most of the time, nothing really awful happens. After a while, the poltergeist just goes away. But sometimes the poltergeist goes, I don't want to leave, and can be very dangerous. One of the best known cases, a really nasty and dangerous poltergeist, comes from Canada. It began in a small city of Amherst, Nova Scotia, the year 1878. Oh, that was the year I was murdered in one of my lives. The location for this weird and sometimes terrifying event seemed ordinary enough. It was given a plain two-story cottage. The cottage had been rented to David Tweed, a shoe factory foreman. Tweed lived there with his wife, Olivia, and two very young sons, George and William. We're setting the stage. Also living in the house were two of Olivia's sisters, Jeannie and Esther. Jeannie was 21 and Esther was around whom the events centered, was 19 years old. That goes down nice and easy. As with most poltergeist cases, the Amherst affair started rather quietly. One night in September, Esther jumped out of bed, screaming that she said she thought there was a mouse in the bed. Esther and Jeannie searched the room, and there was nothing. The next night, Esther and Jeannie were awakened again. They heard voices coming from the box underneath the bed. They thought it was a mouse had been caught. But when they took the box out from under the bed, the box began jumping around the room all by itself. Therefore, no mouse in box. Imagine that, folks. You're sitting there, you take this box out from underneath your bed, and it starts jumping up and down. Oh, hi, Jeremy. Hi, Alicia, thanks for tuning in. We got nobody over there. You got anybody tuning in? Who's tuning in?
We have Tom, Gary, Nicole, and who else? Nat, Christy, and Gail.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're all enjoying the stories from the Garrison, tales from the Garrison. We will continue on this poltergeist case. Even Esther, okay, so a day and night went by and nothing happened. The strange events were almost forgotten. In the evening, Esther said that she wasn't feeling well. She went to bed very early, and about 10 o'clock she woke up screaming. Her face and arms were swollen up horribly. "What's the matter with me?" she cried. "I must be dying." That must be cool to go through. While Esther was still crying out, there was a tremendous bang heard throughout the house. The family rushed around to see if anything had been broken. Nothing seemed to have been broken. The source of the noise could not be found. After a few hours, Esther's swelling went down. She returned to normal. She fell asleep immediately. The house was quiet and peaceful for the rest of the night and for the next 4 days and nights. Then it began again. The covers suddenly and mysteriously ripped off of Esther's bed. Tweed put them back on again. And then Tweed put them on, and they were immediately pulled off again. Pillows were thrown around the room, and poor Esther began to swell up again. People knew he needed help. He called in the local physician, Dr. Carrette. Knock knock. Dr. Carrette here. At the first, the doctor laughed at Tweed's story of the strange noises and flying pillows. But that was obvious that it was obvious to the doctor that something was wrong with Esther. As the doctor began to examine Esther, her pillow began moving around. The doctor tried to hold it still, but it continued. The room was now filled with knocking and scratching sounds. No one could tell where the source was coming from. They realized that the scratching represented a poltergeist attempt to condemn the case. They watched as their words were scratched in the wall. Esther Cox and Esther Cox, you are mine to kill. Imagine waking up and seeing that on the wall. The knocks and rapping continued for another 2 hours, and at one time it got so loud that they knocked some of the plaster out of the wall. Dr. Carrette wasn't laughing anymore. He agreed to return the next day. When he came back, the doctor accompanied Esther around the house. At one point, the poltergeist threw potatoes at both of them. Dr. Carrette had been also heard what he described as a sledgehammer on the grounds throughout the house. The stranger happenings at the Tweed house began to attract attention from other citizens of Amherst, and every morning a crowd gathered around the home. Finally, the crowd grew so large that the police had to be brought in to control the crowd. Imagine you got a haunted house and you're trying to deal with it, and you got a crowd of people outside looking and taking pictures. Esther became very ill, and she was unable to get out of bed for weeks. After she began to get better, she was sent to another sister's house to recover. During this whole period, the poltergeist did nothing. And nobody saw anything. And that's what a lot of people thought, and that's what a lot of people said. There is no doubt that all of the strange happenings that are centered around the 19-year-old Esther. But many people swore that she could have created created the disturbances herself. They saw Esther sitting on the side of the room while this was all going on. They saw they said they saw objects thrown at her. Interesting. They said there was no way that Esther could have done what this poltergeist did. When Esther finally returned to the Tweed house, she brought the poltergeist back with her. None of the poltergeist had now the poltergeist had a new trick. It began playing with lighted matches. Esther insisted that she could hear the thing talking to her. And it was saying that it was going to burn the house down. Lighted matches began falling apparently from nowhere, and some of the fires were started all over the house. Tweed managed to put them out and was badly shaken. Esther's sister Jeannie so began to say that she could communicate with these spirits, and the spirit's name was Bob, and that Bob was indeed unintended to burn. Yeah, Bob was indeed intended to burn the house down, and there were more small fires. So this guy Bob, the spirit, really wanted to start some issues here. Tweed did the only thing he could think of doing. He threw Esther out of the house. She got a job in a local restaurant, but the disturbances followed her. Chairs and tables and other restaurant equipment would go flying, knocked over very soon. Esther was out of a job, and Tweed took her back. About the same time, a showman named Walter Hubbard came to Amherst and thought there might be a way to make some money off the poltergeist. So he would put Esther in a stage, and he said people would pay to see the poltergeist mysterious objects. The poltergeist, however, did not cooperate with Esther. Esther sat on the stage, but nothing happened. The great money-making scheme fell flat, and the customers demanded all their money back. Tweed finally had enough of Esther and the troublesome spirit. He threw her out of the house once and for all. The rest of Esther's story seems to have been an unhappy one. She wandered from place to place, time to time, and at one point she was accused of burning down an employer's barn. She said that the poltergeist did it. The judge didn't believe her story, and so Esther Cox spent some time in jail. She claimed that she had poltergeist attached to her. What are we to make from this such story, couch and table story? So Esther Cox, was she a fake or was she real? Or was the ground real? I believe she was real. I'll let you guys think over that one. All right. This came from Denison's Boogie Book. Denison's a place down in Waltham. Denison's Manufacturing. I doubt they're still around. This came out in the 1930s for Halloween. I was going to read a couple of the other ones, but can't do it. So we're going to attempt to read this one here. Actually, we're going to hold this one off. I'm going to pull something out of one of the books. All right, we're going to go to Edgar Allan Poe. and we're going to do the raven. Those are beautiful animals, aren't they? Who's seen a raven before? I've seen a raven. I've seen them over graveyards. I've seen them over houses. I've seen them fly over me. They're really interesting birds of prey. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered a weak and weary over manly a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, and suddenly there came a tapping. Look, it's already tapping over here. And some of the gently rapping of my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor, I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. Ah, distinctively I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember rose in ghosts upon the floor. I wished the morrow vainly I had so to borrow from my books success and sorrow for the loss of Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore, and the silken and uncertain rustling of the purple curtain thrilled me, killed me with fantastic terrors, and as I felt before. So that now to still a beating of my heart I stood repeating, 'tis some visitor entertaining the entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, nothing more. Presently from my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. Sir, and I, or madam, only your forgiveness I implore. But the face is I was napping, so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping. So faintly you came tapping at my chamber door. This I scare was sure I heard you. I hear the open wide the door. Darkness there is nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, as long as I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortals ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token. And the only word there spoken was whispered word. Oh, I did that. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. Then I whispered and murmured back as the word Lenore, merely this and nothing more. Anybody's watching on screen right now, I just got tapped in my lower back over here. That's what threw me off. Sorry about that. There's something in here. There's always been spirits in this place, but I think tonight we really got them going. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard the tapping of something louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that there's something at my window. Lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still in moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, wind with many a flirt and utter flutter. In there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obvious sense made here, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mane of the lord or lady purchased above my chamber door, purchased upon the beast of the palace, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. This ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy unto smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countess its were, though they crest be a horn and shaves thou. I said, art sure no craven. Ghostly. Okay. Ghostly and grim, the ancient raven wandering from nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Praetorian shore. Quoth the raven nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevance of lore, for we cannot help the agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpture burst above his chamber door with such name as nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on its placed bust spoke only the one word, as if his soul in that one word had outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he flooded, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, and my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Settled in silliness, broken by reply, was so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I. What it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmercifully disaster followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that hope that melodically burden bore, or of nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled and cushioned the seat in front of the bird, and one bust up and door. Then upon the velvet sinking I betook any self to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this omnis bird of yore, with this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. Then I sat engaged, guessing, but no syllable expressing, to one of the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into the blossom's core. There are more, and I want divining with my head at ease reclining. Oh, the cushioned velvet lining that the lamp lighter gloated over. But those whose velvet, violet, lining with lamplight glowing, she shall press, nevermore. I want to take a second here. We are going to go over a little bit, folks, but that's all right too. We might get some more spirits running around here. But we're going to keep this going until we're almost done. There's one more thing I want to cover up, and we're almost done the Raven. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by the scrappin whose foolish tinkled and tuft floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee by those angels he hath sent there respite, and neath from the memories of Lenore. Quail, oaf, quaff, this kind of nepotence, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if the bird or the devil, whether the temper sent, or whether the tempest tossed there, here ashore, resolute yet all undaunted on this desert land, enchanted, oh, this home by horn haunted. Tell me truly, I'm implore, is there balm in the Gilead? Tell me, I'm implored. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet and I, Highlander, that thing an evil prophet still, if bird or devil, by the heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow and laden it within the distant of Amen, I shall clasp the sainted maiden of whom angels named Lenore. Grasp the rare, the radiant, the maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. But that word, our sign, is parting bind, or fiend. I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's phantom shore. Love no black plume as to token of that lie thy soul had spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quilt that bust above my door. Take thy break out my heart, and take thy from the oil of doubt. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flittering, still sitting, and still sitting, one on this pallid bust of Palathea just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all seemingly of demons that is dreaming, and the lamplight, oh, him streaming, throws his shadow on the floor, and my own soul from out of the shadow that lies boding on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Boy, I brought a lot of great scary moments and scary memories and hunting moments down there on East Broadway with the Countess, here at the Garrison House, at the Pawtucket Graveyard, at Hilldale Cemetery. Wherever they roam, there are spirits. And in fact, the spirits are starting to call me back to my home too. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. I want to thank you, but don't forget, this week, there's a lot of the Trails and Sales events. I may resurrect myself a few more times. Thursday night will be at Lawrence Cable TV, 468 Essex Street. Come on down, learn a little about haunted Essex County. Next Friday and Saturday night, we'll be doing some more ghost hunts at the most haunted location, cemetery in New England, Hilldale Cemetery. But for now, I'm heading back to my crypt, to my home, so I can refuel my energies and enjoy a life of sleeping and maybe coming back in a week to see you all. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I'll see you soon. Good night, everybody.